Welcome to Morning Mimosas, where we value human life, criminal justice, healing, and education for the Black and minority communities. What that entails: wrongful convictions, missing persons, cold cases, breaking stigmas, and educating with one goal at the end: making sure that we are doing effective change, one person at a time. Hello, Morning Mimosa viewers. My name is Holly. I am the founder. Today, we don't have our co-host Fatu, but sending her our love as she is always with us. As you guys know, this is Morning Mimosas, where we value criminal justice, healing, and education for the Black and minority communities. Guys, we have a special treat for today. We have Councilwoman Stacie Gilmore of District 11 here in Denver, Colorado on Morning Mimosas. I am truly honored to have her on my platform, and we're just going to have a little chat and just talk about community and all the other issues that affect community and what we can do and what our parts are to greater that community. But before we do that, we're going to give her our morning mimosas welcome first, because you guys know how we do. We have to give her the proper welcome. Hello, Miss Gilmore. Welcome to Morning Mimosas.
Hello, great to join you. Excited to be here.
Yes, ma'am. So, Councilwoman Gilmore, let's get started. Let's start with, who are we speaking to today? Who is Stacie Gilmore?
That's not a question I get asked every day. So let me think about it. I am a passionate community member. I love my neighborhood. I love the people that live in Montbello and the far northeast. It's not only friends, but it's family. And so, I'm a community person, and I'm a mom and a partner and a godmom, and, really want to make sure that we're supporting those whose voices have been silenced or marginalized for hundreds of years. And so that's really who I am, is making sure that I'm creating space for folks to share their stories and their thoughts and ideas about how we can do better in not only the far northeast, but in Denver.
I absolutely love it. So, Miss Gilmore, I was actually doing some research about you, and it looks like you are third generation Coloradoan, and you were born and raised in the city of Bush. Is that information correct?
Yeah, so I am a third generation Coloradan. I was raised in Brush, Colorado, and so it's out on the northeastern plains. Whenever anybody asks me where it's at, it's on your way to Nebraska. And so it was a small rural agricultural town. And as soon as I turned 18, I left and moved up to Denver because it didn't have the freedom that I wanted to become who I thought I wanted to be in life. And, also came up to Denver to go to college. I've got my undergraduate at Metro. And so it was a great move, but definitely understand small town America and move to the city so we could have diversity and inclusivity and do some good work here.
That is awesome. So, if you could tell the people, because you are District 11, so that means you service Montbello and the Northeast. So why District 11? I know we spoke about it, but I just want the viewers to hear why this district, why Montbello or the Northeast means so much to you.
Oh, well, when I moved to Denver, I lived, closer to downtown and actually met my husband at a fishing clinic when we were both wrapping up from college and, quickly started talking, and we were both wildlife biologists. And, he was like, well, what are you? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, what are you? I can tell. And I'm like, well, I'm half white and I'm half Latina. And he's like, oh my God, I'm half Black and half Japanese. And we're both wildlife biologists. And I was like, wow, that's cool. So, how'd your family react to you saying you wanted to be a wildlife biologist, and being able to share our stories and, come together from that standpoint? And when we started looking for a neighborhood to settle down in, right away we looked at Montbello, and we were like, we're gonna put down roots. And so we actually built a home in Montbello, and my husband's family has been out there for over 50 years. His dad was in the Air Force. A lot of military folks settled in Montbello, and then we raised our 3 kids out there. I have a 27-year-old son, a 24-year-old daughter, and then a 19-year-old daughter. And so raised our 3 kids out there and started getting active in the neighborhood. I would do volunteer work at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge, and do volunteer work out there, but then also founded a registered neighborhood organization called Montbello 2020 back in, I think it was 2008, that I founded that with a couple of different community members so that we could strategically make sure to get whatever we needed to get for Montbello, because we know historically there has been a lack of resources provided to communities of color. And, my kids all went to school at Marama Elementary and Green Valley Ranch, still have family who lives in Montbello and in GVR. And so, becoming the representative for District 11, I represent about half of the Montbello community, and then I have Parkfield, Green Valley Ranch, and High Point, along with all of Denver International Airport. So it's the largest geographic council district in the city, and it's the best district. We have such a strong sense of community. And before I got elected, we had a lot of traffic accidents, and you live in Montbello, so you'll know exactly the intersection that I'm talking about at Avenue and Chambers Road. And so, there were stop signs out there, and it's just too busy of an intersection. And so we were able to, before I even got elected, get a traffic signal out there at Chambers Road and 56th. And now, 2 weekends ago, we opened up the brand new 56th Avenue that's been widened, has medians, signalized intersections. It's a $52 million project that when I was elected 8 years ago, I was told it would never happen. And I'm like, oh, we are so organized. Get ready. We're going to come out, and we got it done.
May I say that, first and foremost, thank you guys for that. Because when I first moved to Montbello, was that 9 years ago, and I would drive down 56 by Chambers, I used to get so nervous at that intersection.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful that you guys came along and just made that happen, because like that, I'm telling you, especially because it's right. I think 56 in Chambers is right. The Rocky Mountain Arsenal is right behind it. So
yeah,
it was just craziness. But I appreciate that. So let me just go ahead and give you your flowers. I think it says now, right? Flowers.
Yeah, thank you. And it was community, because we had to put that project on the ballot. So it had to be a bond project, because the city, in our general fund, we don't have $52 million for a big project like that. So we put together a bond package, and then it went out to the voters. And so you probably voted for that money to get allocated for that project. And so I have to say thanks right back to all the folks that are voting and are really active during those elections, because voting matters. It counts.
Yes. I've been telling people that a lot lately. Please, please, please get out and vote, especially because next year's election is it's going to be very interesting. That's all I'm going to say about that. Speaking of which, what are your plans as a council member? I think that's like one of the biggest things that a lot of people want to know. Like, what are you going to do as far as, I guess, the things that also pertain to morning mimosas, as far as like criminal justice, the healing, and the educating? Because I did read, I did go on your website, and I did see that you're very passionate about safety and protection, job security, food security. So all that pertains to everything that we talk about. What are your plans as far as whichever one you want to start with? Because it's a lot. Wherever you want to start. I'm telling you, it's a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah. Lots of big plans. I mean, I'm trying to be very selective because I've started my third and final term. So in Denver, we're term limited. And so an elected term is 4 years and we can run for 3. And so I'm starting my third and final term as a District 11 council person. And, my priorities haven't necessarily changed much from when I ran, because I want there to be plenty of affordable housing for folks in our city. I want young people to be able to buy a home or a condo so that you can roll your student loans into your mortgage and get a better interest rate and pay that monthly house note, but then also build equity in that property. So then when you do decide to sell, or if you have a medical condition, if you want to take a big trip, you can borrow against that equity that you've built up in the home or condo that you've bought. And so, that's something really important. Anti-displacement sort of tools, or mitigating against gentrification. I am amazed, honestly, because I'm one person, that we have been able to strategically, with all the partners and nonprofits in the neighborhood, Montbello has not gentrified in the last 8 years. And when I got elected in 2015, the economy was hot, but we kept them out. Whenever there were signs in the neighborhood that said, "We'll buy your home for cash," community members were collecting those up. They'd come dump them off at my office and I'd get rid of them. And then I would call that business and leave them a message and say, "Hey, you don't know me, but I'm the elected representative for this neighborhood. And what you're doing is gross. It is dishonest. You shouldn't be paying anybody cash for a home. I don't want you out here. My neighborhood doesn't want you out here. Stop doing this. We're picking up your signs and throwing them away." And we pushed back on that. So, affordable housing, access to food, healthy food options is always a priority. When I got elected, right before I got elected, the Safeway at Green Valley Ranch Boulevard and Chambers Road closed down with no notice. Everybody was like, "What the heck? Where's our Safeway going?" And so we lost a Safeway and we got a Walmart neighborhood market in there, which isn't always what people want. And so really started working on driving developers around the neighborhood. I'd meet them at my office off of I-70 in Peoria, and I'd be like, "I'll drive. Let's go get a coffee." And I had them in my car, and I would purposely drive them through Montbello, show them the neighborhood, talk about the open air canals that we have for our stormwater drainage. That was done as a cost savings measure. You don't see that anywhere else in any neighborhoods in Denver. It's all piped. There's a reason why we have those open air drainage canals, because they did it on the cheap. And so pointing that out and saying, how are you going to help me make sure that residents in my neighborhood have access to grocery stores and have access to retail? And, we worked together and we got the Costco at I-70 and Green Valley Ranch. We also got a Sprouts and a Natural Grocers. I'm still waiting and working with the King Supers out there. We're trying to, do that work, but food access is always really important. And then, something that I know that you share a passion about and trying to do better and differently is definitely around safety. And when we talk about the over policing that we see, especially in communities of color, it's because our neighborhoods have not been built with proper lighting, with proper traffic infrastructure, with environmental design that helps reduce crime, that helps people feel safer in their neighborhoods. And, a quick story here, during, it was actually before 2020 and George Floyd, and everything happening around that civil rights movement. But we in Montbello, because of the drainage canals, our streets are curvy, like how water would flow. And so right next to Silverman Park, we were starting to track people driving 50, 60 miles an hour in the neighborhood. And then the park wasn't being activated. And so we went out there with our Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, and we're like, okay, you're going to see how fast people are driving out here, and then you'll put the proper infrastructure in. That's logically what you would think would happen. Well, we go out there, they clock people driving 50, 60 miles an hour, and we had to do a study. And so they wanted to get pedestrian counts and understand how many pedestrians were walking to the park so that that would warrant us getting a crosswalk and infrastructure. And so we're out there and there's not a lot of people coming to the park, because I was like, people don't walk here because they drive. Because if you have a baby in a stroller or an older adult, nobody wants to get hit walking to the park.
Right.
And so the consultant that was working with them, they were like, Councilwoman, we're not getting the pedestrian counts. This isn't going to warrant a crosswalk. And we know that you really want the crosswalk and, stop signs, etc. Could you put out on Facebook, or could you call some people and ask them to come out here and help us get these counts up? And I was like, no, I cannot, because you're not going to tokenize us to do what's right out here. And so we pushed and pushed and pushed, and I'll send you over the article link to it. But Denver Police Department, trying to help slow people down, decided that they were going to do traffic enforcement at this same intersection. And so I would drive by there, and there was one afternoon that I drove by and I saw a police officer pull over somebody, and I flipped back around so I could park on the other side and watch what was happening. And he had pulled over a young Black man, probably a teenager, and, of course, gave him the stuff. The cop walks back to his car, and the kid, of course, had his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, and the kid just sat there and he put his head down on the steering wheel and just kept it there. And I'm watching, because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, what's going on. And so, everything transpired, and the kid got a ticket, etc., and he went on his way. But seeing that firsthand, where we as community are trying to advocate for safety, it gets misconstrued and turned back on us, that now you're going to give a kid a ticket and thank God that was all that happened, because we know that traffic stops can go in a very negative, dangerous way very, very quickly. And then at like the next commanders meeting, the cops were really excited that they'd been doing traffic enforcement. They gave out 700 speeding tickets during the month of June when we were trying to do this. What a systems failure. Why were the cops not calling our Department of Transportation saying there is a system failure out here? You need to put in crosswalks and stop signs. You need to slow down traffic. The bureaucracy is all right there. And I honestly feel like my experience as an elected is and I share that openly so that others can learn from it and understand that you're going to be told no immediately, because that's how the system operates. You've got to be persistent and strategic to break that system down. And now we have a roundabout in that area to slow down traffic. People can walk to the park, but it's those sort of things, especially around police accountability and creating safe neighborhoods, will always, always be my priorities for the community, for sure.
I absolutely love that. I just want to say that 700 in that 1 month is a lot. But as long as we have you, Councilwoman, things will change. That's what we're here for. We're here to do effective change, not just talk about the change, but actually be about the change. One of the things about Morning Mimosas and me and my co-host, Ms. Fatu, we're both going back to school to become investigators. So we want to make sure that we're also doing our parts, because people sometimes just sit back and they're just always complaining, oh, this isn't being changed or this isn't being changed. But what are you doing to be a part of the change? So I just want to say thank you for everything that you're doing, and thank you for the information today. It's been absolutely amazing. So, Councilwoman Gilmore, before we get out of here, do you have anything else you want to say to District 11 or our Morning Mimosa viewers? Because there's a lot of them.
Oh, thank you. Well, so glad you're going back to school, because I think the investigations piece is so important, where you can have somebody helping you in these different scenarios. And, something that I would really ask your listeners and viewers to pay attention to is, how we kind of started out, where I was, asking the mayor, how are you developing your 2024 budget? How are you doing the House 1000, which is really a shelter 1000? Like, nobody's housed if you're keeping folks with a roof over their head for 14 days or even 30 days. That's not housing, that's sheltering. But what we're finding is, and I'll send you over the map, what we're finding is, because real estate in communities of color has historically been deflated economically, a lot of the hotels that Mayor Johnston is buying up and proposing to use for sheltering options are along the Quebec corridor, which is a historic African-American community, along the Peoria corridor, and now we're concerned that he's looking at the Tower corridor. And so the concentration of poverty in communities of color is my biggest concern. And that's where I would really ask your listeners to pay attention and ask those questions, because when we know in Montbello, for example, for 50 years, we haven't had access to healthcare right in our neighborhood. We haven't had access to entrepreneurial incubator businesses to help grow small businesses. We historically haven't had any of those supports. So on top of that, we're now talking about possibly Crown Plaza on the boundary of Denver and Aurora. So Crown Plaza, right up there at I-70 in Chambers,
Yes.
that is in Aurora.
Right.
We're hearing rumblings that Aurora might be in partnership with Denver looking at acquiring that Crown Plaza for sheltering. So my question is, and what I would ask your viewers to ask is, what are we going to do to support better the residents, the longtime residents of Montbello, who many are on fixed incomes, who many are at threat of missing one house payment, and then they become homeless? How are we going to support the people who have already been here but haven't had those resources? And now you're going to add on additional sheltering options, which we always want to help migrants, newcomers, and people experiencing homelessness. But we need to be honest about, we need access to those resources too. And so it being a yes and scenario. Otherwise, why aren't you looking at affluent neighborhoods along Wash Park or in South Denver? Why aren't you buying up hotels out there to provide shelter to as well, instead of making it like the new redlining and having everybody who's struggling in one geographic location and area? And so that would be really the question I would ask your viewers to monitor and ask.
You guys heard it here. You guys are listening to, and you guys live in the Montbello and the Denver area, please ask yourself this question. Once again, thank you so much, Councilwoman Stacie Gilmore, for being on Morning Mimosas. We truly appreciate your insight, and we truly appreciate everything that you do. And Morning Mimosas will support you during your last term and whatever else you have going on after that.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit more.
Yes, ma'am. And as you guys know, this is Morning Mimosas, where we value criminal justice, healing, and education for the Black and minority communities. Until next time, see you guys later.